Chapter 1. The Quiet Invitation. It began with a whisper, not a public announcement, not a royal call, just a soft message, slipped gently into Prince Harry's hand by one of the Queen's most trusted aides. Her Majesty would like to see you. Alone. Harry looked up, his heart tight in his chest. He didn't speak, just nodded, slowly, as the words echoed inside him. He was already at Balmoral, but somehow this made the castle feel colder, quieter, as if even the walls were listening. Outside, the sky was turning gold, then gray, that soft Scottish twilight, like a breath held between day and night. Harry's boots clicked on the old stone floor, step by step. He walked the long corridor, one he knew well, and yet tonight, it felt different. His hand brushed against the cold railing. The scent of polished wood, lavender, and age filled the air. He passed portraits of kings, queens, soldiers, ancestors watching him, judging him, or simply waiting. He paused at a heavy wooden door, the one at the very end. He'd stood here before, as a boy, as a soldier, as a grandson, but tonight, he didn't know who he was, or who she would be, on the other side. He raised his hand, but didn't knock. For a moment, he simply breathed. Then softly, almost silently, the door opened. And there she was, the Queen, Elizabeth, his grandmother, sitting by the window, the light of the setting sun warming her pale face, a shawl draped over her shoulders, and her eyes. Her eyes found his, and didn't let go. "Come in, Harry," she said, her voice thin but clear. So he stepped in, and closed the door behind him. What was said next would stay with him forever. Chapter 2. A frail smile. A familiar voice. He stood just inside the doorway, frozen. For a moment, he couldn't speak. She looked smaller, older, but still, somehow, unshakably her. Queen Elizabeth II. Her posture was soft but proud. Her hands, folded in her lap, trembled slightly, but her eyes, her eyes, still sharp, still kind, still full of something ancient and human. "Harry," she said again, more gently this time. "Come closer." That voice, so familiar. He'd heard it behind speeches, at ceremonies, at family dinners. But this time, it wasn't for the world. It was just for him. He stepped forward, slowly, carefully, like he was afraid the moment might shatter. She smiled. Not a formal, royal smile, but something warmer, softer, real. "You took your time," she said, with a tiny chuckle, her humor still there, even in the quiet of her final days. Harry tried to speak, but his throat tightened. So he just smiled back and sat beside her. There was a long pause. Neither of them rushed. The silence was thick, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with memories, afternoons in the garden, secret jokes in public moments, his mother's laughter echoing through the halls. The Queen reached out, her hand as light as a feather. She touched his gently. Her skin was cold, but her warmth was in her words. "I've missed you," she whispered. "Not just here, but you." Harry blinked. He wasn't expecting that. Not from her. He looked down, his hand in hers. "I've missed you too, Granny," he said softly. And in that second, he wasn't a prince. He was just a grandson, a boy, holding on to time. She nodded. Her gaze never left his. "Then let's not waste this moment," she said, almost in a whisper. "There's so much I want to say." And just like that, the weight of years, of distance, of silence, began to melt away. This was no royal meeting, no ceremony, no stage. This was heart to heart, and it had only just begun. Chapter 3. Tea, Silence, and the Unspoken Years. The room was quiet. Not empty, not cold, but still. The kind of stillness that holds everything. Time, breath, memory. Harry sat beside her now, not too close, not too far, just close enough to feel her presence, to hear the soft sound of her breathing. A small table stood between them. On it, 2 cups of tea. Steam rose in thin, gentle swirls, like ghosts of afternoons long gone. Neither of them touched the tea. Not yet. The Queen's hand rested on the edge of her chair. Pale, calm. Harry's fingers were curled in his lap, restless, unsure. They said nothing, and yet the silence was full of things they hadn't said, of years between them, of choices made, and feelings left behind. There was love. Yes, but also ache. Memories drifted like dust in the fading light. A garden in summer. A young boy laughing, chasing dogs. A grandmother watching from the window. And then a hallway. A hospital. A funeral. So many quiet moments. So many unspoken words. Harry looked at her. Not as the Queen, but as his grandmother. The woman who had always seemed so strong, so certain. But now, she looked tired and wise and kind. He reached for the tea, finally, lifted the cup to his lips. The taste was soft, simple, a little bitter. He smiled faintly. It was exactly how she always made it. Then she spoke, so quietly. It almost didn't break the silence. "You've come far, haven't you?" Harry froze. The question wasn't about distance. Not really. It was about everything. He swallowed. His voice, when it came, was low. "Yes," he said. "I think I have." She nodded. Just once. Her eyes stayed on him. "I've watched," she said. "I didn't always understand, but I watched." A pause. "And I worried." Harry looked down. He felt the weight of her words, like a warm hand on his shoulder. "I know," he whispered. I didn't want to hurt anyone." She smiled, soft, tired, forgiving. "But you were hurting," she said. That truth, it sat heavy between them. "I missed this," he said. "Us. The quiet. The feeling that I belonged." She reached for her tea, then, slowly, carefully, held it in her hands like something precious. "You do belong," she said gently. "Even when you feel far, even when things change, blood does not forget." Harry felt something in his chest crack open. A breath he hadn't known he was holding left his lungs. "I'm sorry," he said. She looked at him, her eyes soft. "For what?" she asked. He shook his head. "For leaving, for speaking out, for all of it." A silence followed. But this one was lighter. Then she reached across the space between them. Her hand found his, not a royal gesture, not formal, just love. "I've made mistakes too," she said. "Perhaps not the same ones, but mistakes all the same." They sat like that. No crown, no titles, just family. The tea had grown cold, but the room was warm. And in that moment, something old began to heal. In Chapter 4, The Weight of Two Worlds. The silence returned, but now it was different. Not cold, not distant. It was the silence of waiting, of something trying to be said, but still sitting, just beneath the skin. Harry shifted in his seat. His fingers curled around the edge of the cushion. His eyes found hers, and he saw no crown, just her, his grandmother, Elizabeth. She was waiting, patient, open. He took a breath, held it, let it go. Then he began. "It's hard," he said, his voice low. "Being between two worlds." The Queen didn't speak, didn't move, just listened. Harry looked down, his jaw tight. "There's the world I was born into, the one full of rules, duties, expectations." A pause. He glanced up, just for a moment. "And then, there's the world I chose." His voice trembled slightly. "The world where I can breathe, where I can walk down the street and hold my wife's hand, where I can be a father, without cameras chasing us every day." He ran a hand through his hair. "But sometimes, even in that world, I feel lost." She watched him. Still no judgment. Still only love. Harry's voice cracked. And I wonder, did I betray something? Or did I save myself? The Queen blinked slowly, her gaze never leaving his. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, he said, louder now. I couldn't stay. A long breath. I couldn't pretend anymore. Pretend that everything was fine. Pretend that I didn't hear the whispers, the headlines, the silence when I asked for help. His hand clenched. I needed to protect my family, he said. My wife, my children, myself. His throat tightened again. But it's heavy. He looked her in the eye. This guilt, it follows me. And there it was, the truth, spoken at last. The Queen leaned forward, slowly, delicately. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know. Harry blinked. She nodded gently. I know it's heavy, and I know you carry it every day. A pause. But Harry, your heart was never disloyal. That sentence landed like a soft stone. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathed in, felt something move inside him. I made choices too, she continued. Some that hurt, some that healed, but none were simple. Her gaze softened even more. You didn't walk away from us, Harry. You walked towards something you believed in. She placed her hand over his. And I see that now. He looked at her, the edges of his eyes wet. But do they? He asked. Do they see me? Or just the space I left behind? A long silence. Then she spoke, her voice full of quiet strength. Some will never understand, but that is not your burden. A tear slipped down his cheek. I wanted to make you proud, he whispered. She smiled, that same frail, warm smile. You already have. And just like that, the weight on his shoulders shifted, not gone, but lighter. They sat in silence again. This time, it didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace, like truth. And for the first time in a long, long while, Harry felt seen. Chapter 5. Her Majesty's Regrets. The room grew still again, but this time, it wasn't silence of distance. It was silence of wait. Something unsaid. Waiting. The Queen sat back, her hand still gently resting over Harry's. Her fingers were light, fragile, like old paper. But her gaze was strong. And then she spoke. Do you know, she said slowly, there are many things people assume I've never done? Harry looked at her, unsure. Like cry, she added with a small smile. A pause. I have, of course, in quiet, in private, when no one was watching. She turned to look out the window. The last light of day was slipping behind the hills. There's something about this family, she said, her voice low. We are taught from the beginning to endure. Harry nodded softly. He knew that lesson too well. To stay still, she continued, when your heart wants to run. To smile, when everything inside you is breaking. A long breath. Duty, she whispered. It builds walls, beautiful walls, golden even, but still walls. She looked at him now. Director, brave. And I fear, she said gently, that sometimes those walls kept you out. Harry said nothing, but his eyes were full. I watched you, Harry, she said, from afar, far too often, and I said too little. Another breath. I wish I had told you sooner how proud I was, how much I saw your mother in you, how deeply I admired your courage, not just on the battlefield, but in life. Her hand trembled slightly. I thought silence would protect you, that not speaking was the royal way. She closed her eyes for a moment. But now, at the edge of my days, I see how wrong I was. Harry's voice came, soft. Granny. But she raised her hand, not to stop him, just to finish. I regret the distance, she said. I regret the coldness we let grow between us. I regret not coming to you sooner, not making the time, not breaking the rules, when your heart needed something real. Tears were falling now. Quiet ones, her own, and Harry's. I wanted to be more than a queen to you, she whispered. I wanted to be someone you could run to, not run from. Harry leaned forward gently. You still are, he said. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. But I should have told you, Harry. I saw you, even when you couldn't see me. And I loved you. I love you, just as you are. He bowed his head, tears sliding down his cheeks. His hand reached for hers again, firmer now, grateful. I forgive you, he said. She looked surprised, but also relieved. She squeezed his hand back. And I forgive myself, she said quietly. Because at the end of a life, there is no point in carrying shame, only love. The fire crackled softly. Outside, night had fully fallen. But inside, something had been lit. A truth, a bond, a release. Not of title, not of name, but of soul. And as they sat there, queen and grandson, woman and boy, there was no crown between them, only love. Chapter 6, Legacy, Not Crown. The room was quiet again. But not because there was nothing left to say. No. Now. It was the kind of quiet that hold something sacred, something about to be passed on. The Queen sat back in her chair. Her eyes were tired, but clear. Sharp, even now. She looked at Harry for a long moment, and then, slowly, she reached up and touched the edge of her brooch. Gold, diamonds, worn with pride for decades, but she didn't speak of it. Instead, her hand fell to her lap, and she said, very softly, "A crown is only metal." Harry blinked. He wasn't sure he'd heard her right, but she nodded, eyes locked on his. "It shines," she whispered. "Yes. It carries weight. It means duty, power, even fear sometimes. A breath. But it is not everything." She looked out the window now, as if seeing beyond the trees. "Legacy," she said, "is not built on jewels or titles." Her voice grew steadier. "It is built on how we love, how we forgive, how we stand when others fall." Harry listened, completely still. "I've worn the crown longer than most people live," she said. "But that is not what I hope they remember." Another pause. "I hope they remember that I tried to be kind, that I held this country through its darkest hours, not with iron fists, but with patience and faith." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "I hope they remember that I listened." She turned to him again. "And you, Harry, what will you leave behind?" He didn't answer right away, because the question hit deep. She continued, "You've lived outside the gates, beyond the pageantry, into a world that does not bow." Her eyes softened. "That takes courage." He looked at her now, truly saw her, and what he saw was not a ruler, but a woman, a mother, a grandmother, a soul near the end, trying to leave behind more than a throne. She reached out, her hand light, trembling. "You carry her, you know," she said. Harry's breath caught. "Your mother, Diana. The name? So rarely spoken in these halls." Felt like a bell ringing in his chest. "She was not afraid to feel," the Queen whispered, "to speak, to reach beyond the rules." A tear rolled down Harry's cheek. "She loved deeply," the Queen said. "Sometimes too openly for the world she lived in, but she never hid her heart." And then her eyes met his again. "And neither do you." Silence. The words hung in the air, soft, powerful. "You will not wear this crown," she said, gesturing gently. "But perhaps you were never meant to." Another breath. "You were meant to build something new." Harry leaned forward. "What if I fail?" he asked. "What if I can't carry her legacy or yours?" She smiled. so faintly. "You won't fail, my dear boy," she said, "because you are already living it." And in that moment, it wasn't about palaces, or power, or protocol. It was about truth. It was about love, courage, kindness. That was the legacy. And it had nothing to do with gold. Chapter 7. The Secret Within the Box. There was a pause, a long one. The kind of pause where time seems to fold in on itself, where breath hangs in the air, and memory walks into the room. The Queen sat quietly, her hand, resting gently on the arm of her chair, tapped once. Then she turned, just slightly, and reached for something on the nightstand beside her. A small object wrapped in shadow. Harry watched her, curious, cautious. Her fingers, slow but certain, grasped the edge of it, and then she held it out to him. A box, small, wooden, dark from age, carved with delicate roses, and sealed with a tiny brass clasp. She said nothing at first, just looked at him, eyes deep, full of something unspoken. Harry reached out, carefully, and took it. It felt heavier than it looked, real, personal, like it held more than just what was inside. He looked up, question in his eyes. The Queen's voice came soft and slow. It was hers. Harry froze. She gave it to me once, before she left for Paris. His heart began to pound. Your mother, she continued, had things she didn't say. Feelings she held in silence. Dreams she kept in her heart and nowhere else. Her eyes never left the box. I think she wanted you to have this, but not when you were a boy. A pause. Only when you were ready. Harry's fingers touched the clasp, but he didn't open it. Not yet. He held it, like something sacred. She trusted me with it, the Queen whispered. And now, I trust you. Harry swallowed hard. What's inside? He asked quietly. She gave a small smile. I never opened it, she said. Some things are not meant to be shared. A long breath. Not everything must be spoken, she added. Some things are meant to be kept. Harry looked down at the box again. His hands trembled. 1,000 thoughts rushed through him. What could it be? A letter? A photo? Something she wore? Touched? Loved? His mother's voice echoed in his mind. A laugh. A word. A whisper from the past. And suddenly, he didn't need to open it. Not yet. The meaning was already there. Not in the contents, but in the giving. A bridge between mother and son, between past and present, between silence and understanding. He held the box to his chest, eyes closed. The Queen watched him, and for the first time in their conversation, she looked tired, but peaceful, as if something had come full circle. Harry opened his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded once. "It's yours now." They sat in silence, not empty, but full, and as the fire crackled in the quiet of the old room, and the night wrapped itself around the castle walls, a legacy was passed, not through crowns, but through something deeper, something hidden, in a box of memory. Chapter 8. One last blessing. The light was almost gone. Outside the window, the sky had turned deep blue, then indigo, then almost black. A single lamp lit the room now, software gentle, flickering like a heartbeat. The fire had burned low, and yet the warmth remained. Harry sat with the box still in his hands, quiet, still. He hadn't spoken in a while. Neither had she. But there was no need. The silence between them was full. Full of meaning. Full of peace. And then she reached for him, her hand slow, trembling, found his. It was warm. So warm. Harry looked down at their hands. So many years between them. So many stories. So many days. And yet, in this moment, they were simply two souls, meeting at the edge of goodbye. "Harry," she whispered. His eyes lifted. She smiled, small, but sure. "There's something I want to give you," she said, "before I go." He leaned closer, afraid of what she might say next. "Not a title," she continued. "Not a role. Not something made of gold or name." She squeezed his hand, gently. "This is not royal," she said. "It's human." Harry's throat tightened. "I forgive you," she said softly, "for leaving, for speaking, for hurting." A pause. "And I thank you." His eyebrows lifted, surprised. "For what?" Her voice cracked, just a little. "For being true," she said. "For being brave enough to follow your heart when others didn't understand. For protecting your family. For holding on. To love." Harry blinked. Hard. The tears came without shame now. He didn't try to hide them. "And now," she said with all the strength she had left, "I ask only one thing." He leaned in, heart pounding. "Carry on," she whispered. A beat. "But not in my name, Harry. Not for the crown. Not for duty." Her eyes locked with his. "Carry on, in your name." The silence that followed was deeper than before. Not heavy, but sacred. Like the closing of a chapter, written with care. Harry nodded, slowly. "I will," he said. The Queen smiled once more. Her thumb brushed his hand. "You have your mother's fire," she whispered, "and your own light." She leaned back, her body small against the chair, and her eyes never left him. "I'm proud of you," she said, "not as your queen, but as your granny." Harry pressed her hand to his lips. "I love you," he whispered. Her smile remained. "I know," she breathed. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. The castle seemed to sigh, and in that soft, fading light, Harry received something far greater than a crown. He received a blessing, a final gift of grace, of peace, of love, untouched by duty, unchanged by time. Chapter 9. The Walk Back Down the Hall. The door closed, softly, almost like a whisper. Harry stood there for a moment, just outside her room, the wood behind him still warm from the touch of his fingers. The box, tucked gently under his arm, felt heavier than before, but not because of what was inside. Number. Because of what it meant. What had just passed could never be spoken in public, could never be repeated, and yet it would live inside him. Forever. He took a slow breath. Then, one step, and then another. The corridor stretched out before him, long, quiet, ancient. But it didn't feel the same. Not anymore. The same portraits stared back at him. Old kings, queens, warriors of the past. But tonight, their eyes felt softer, less judgmental, more knowing. His footsteps echoed through the hall. Click, click, click. But beneath each sound, there was silence. The kind of silence that follows something sacred. He paused near the window. Outside, the moon had risen. A soft silver light spilled across the cold floor. It touched the carpet, the walls, the edge of his shoes. He looked down at the box in his hands. The carvings, the roses, the lock that hadn't been opened. He didn't need to open it. Not yet. Not tonight. Because the message had already been delivered, not with words, but with love, with forgiveness, with something unspoken, and yet completely clear. He felt the tears come, not sudden, not loud, just slow, real. He wiped his cheek with the back of his hand, but they kept falling, and for once, he didn't care. No one else was here, no cameras, no eyes, just him and the hall, and the echo of her voice still in his ears. Carry on, in your name. The words filled the space around him, and something inside his chest shifted. Heaviness. Yes, but also something lighter. Peace. Maybe not complete, but beginning. He walked on, past tapestries, past doors he used to run by as a child. The hallway that once felt like a tunnel, now felt like a bridge. A path between the boy he was and the man he was becoming. And in his hands, he carried her final gift. Not the box, but her blessing, her trust, her belief that he could walk forward, not in her shadow, but in his own light. He reached the staircase at the end, paused, looked back once, the corridor behind him, dim and golden, still, and somewhere beyond that wooden door, she was still there, not just in body, but in spirit, in memory, in love. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just nodded, once, then turned and walked down the stairs, step by step, into the night, and into a world that suddenly felt new. Chapter 10. What Matters Most. His voice, when it finally came, was soft but steady, measured, like a breath before dawn. He was no longer in the palace, no longer in that long golden hallway, or the quiet room where the queen had once sat. Now, he stood alone, somewhere quiet, somewhere open, under sky, under stars, and under the weight of everything he now carried. The box still in his hand, her words still in his heart, and in the stillness he began to speak. Not to the world, not to the press, not to a crowd, but to us, to anyone who might be listening. To those who wonder, he said, what it's like to walk away. A pause. It's not easy. Another breath. To leave behind tradition, titles, a name built for you before you ever had the chance to speak your own. He looked out into the dark. To step away means stepping into silence. He touched the box gently, but it also means stepping into truth. A soft wind moved around him. She told me that a crown is only metal. He smiled. But love, he said, his voice growing quieter. Love endures. He looked up at the stars now, perhaps thinking of her, perhaps thinking of Diana, or maybe both. She forgave me, he whispered. She thanked me. She told me to carry on. His hand rested on his chest. And I will. A long pause. Not in her name, not for the history books, but for the family I've chosen, for the people I love, for the peace I still believe in. His voice cracked, just a little. People think family is blood, he said, and yes, sometimes it is. But sometimes, he continued, it's the ones who show up, the ones who listen, the ones who hold you when you fall. Another breath, the ones who forgive you when you don't forgive yourself. He lowered his eyes. We are all connected, even when we fight, even when we leave. There is an invisible thread, he said, tied between hearts. It stretches, bends, sometimes even breaks. A pause. But it never truly disappears. And then, his voice softened even more. What matters most, he said, is the love we choose and the memories we keep alive. Silence followed. Not empty, not sad, but full. Full of her voice, her hand on his, her final smile. Harry looked at the box one last time, then tucked it gently into his coat and walked forward, into whatever would come next. Not alone, not anymore. Because some goodbyes are beginnings in disguise, and some stories live on.